Are you where you thought you'd be at this age? Be honest with yourself for a second. When you were younger, you probably had this crystal clear vision of what your life would look like by now. Maybe you'd be married. Maybe you'd have your dream job. Maybe you'd just have it all figured out. But instead, you're probably scrolling through social media at 2 a.m., watching other people live the life you thought you'd have, wondering where the hell it all went wrong. Well, 20 years ago, there was an anime that predicted exactly this feeling. And it didn't just predict the crisis. It explained why it happens, and more importantly, how to get out of it. The anime is Welcome to the NHK, and if you've never heard of it, you're about to understand why your generation is struggling in ways previous generations never did. If this kind of deep dive into anime philosophy interests you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. And I'm curious, what's your take on quarter-life crisis and feeling lost in your 20s? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Welcome to the NHK follows Tatsuhiro Sato, a 22-year-old college dropout who's been a shut-in for 4 years. He barely leaves his apartment, survives on convenience store food, and spends his days consumed by paranoid conspiracy theories about why his life went wrong. Sound familiar? When this anime came out in 2006, Sato seemed like an extreme character, a cautionary tale about what happens when someone completely gives up on society. But watching it now, in 2025, Sato doesn't feel like an extreme anymore. He feels like, well, like a lot of us. The genius of Welcome to the NHK isn't that it predicted hikikomori culture would spread globally, though it did. It's that it identified the exact psychological mechanisms that would create an entire generation of people who feel like failures before they've even really started living. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sato spends his days obsessing over his high school classmates who've made it. He imagines their successful careers, their happy relationships, their perfect lives. This constant comparison becomes a prison that keeps him trapped in his apartment. Now think about your Instagram feed, your LinkedIn notifications, your TikTok For You page. How much of your daily media consumption is essentially digital window shopping into other people's highlight reels? Welcome to the NHK predicted that we'd have unprecedented access to everyone else's success stories, and that this would create unprecedented levels of anxiety and self-doubt in people who are just trying to figure their own lives out. But here's the kicker. The show revealed something about comparison that we're only now starting to understand psychologically. Sato isn't actually comparing himself to real people. He's comparing himself to imagined versions of people based on limited information. Sound familiar? When you see someone's career update on LinkedIn, you're not seeing their actual life. You're seeing a carefully curated professional persona. When you see someone's vacation photos, you're not seeing their financial stress or relationship problems. You're seeing a highlight reel. But Welcome to the NHK goes deeper than just social comparison. Sato develops elaborate conspiracy theories about why he's failed. It's the government. It's society. It's some grand plot to keep him down. And while his specific theories are absurd, the psychological pattern is eerily familiar. How many of us blame external systems for our internal struggles? The economy, social media, our parents, the education system, capitalism, all legitimate sources of difficulty, but also convenient ways to avoid taking responsibility for our own choices. The show suggests that conspiracy thinking isn't really about the conspiracies. It's about protecting your ego from the painful reality that maybe, just maybe, you're partly responsible for where you are. This was revolutionary in 2006. Today, it's basically a psychological profile of internet culture. There's this episode where Sato tries to create a video game with his neighbor. He's convinced this will be his ticket out of failure. He'll become rich and successful and prove everyone wrong. But instead of actually working on the game, he spends days researching game development, watching tutorials, planning elaborate features. He's productive in every way except the one that actually matters. Does this sound familiar? How many hours have you spent watching productivity YouTube videos instead of being productive? How many times have you researched your dream career instead of taking actual steps toward it? Welcome to the NHK identified this pattern 20 years ago. The way digital media allows us to feel productive, while actually avoiding the scary, vulnerable work of trying and potentially failing at something meaningful. Sato's game development phase perfectly captures how modern procrastination works. It's not that we're lazy. We're busy all the time. We're just busy with activities that feel like progress, but don't actually move us forward. Throughout the series, Sato keeps waiting for the perfect moment to restart his life. Once he has enough money, once he feels confident enough, once he has a detailed plan, then he'll rejoin society and everything will be fine. This is the quarter-life crisis in a nutshell. We're all waiting for some magical moment when we'll have our shit together enough to start living our real lives. But that moment never comes, because the feeling of having it together comes from living, not from waiting. The show reveals something profound about modern life. We've been sold this myth that you're supposed to have everything figured out by a certain age, and if you don't, you're failing. But previous generations didn't have social media constantly reminding them of everyone else's milestones. They didn't have access to infinite information about all the things they could be doing with their lives. There's this heartbreaking episode where Sato meets other shut-ins and realizes he's not unique or special in his struggles. His problems aren't the result of some grand conspiracy or unique circumstances. They're common, human, ordinary problems that millions of people face. And this is both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it means your struggles don't make you special. Liberating because it means you're not fundamentally broken. Welcome to the NHK predicted that our generation would struggle with this particular form of existential crisis. The anxiety that comes from having infinite options and no clear path. From being told we can be anything while receiving very little guidance on how to be something. Here's where Welcome to the NHK gets really smart. Sato's recovery doesn't come from achieving his dreams, or proving his worth, or finding his passion. It comes from accepting help, forming genuine connections, and taking small, imperfect actions consistently. The show suggests that the quarter-life crisis isn't solved by finding yourself. It's solved by building yourself through relationships and actions, one day at a time. This was radical in 2006 when self-help culture was all about finding your passion and following your dreams. Today, with rising rates of anxiety and depression among young adults, psychologists are finally catching up to what Welcome to the NHK understood. Meaning comes from connection and contribution, not from self-actualization. But here's the uncomfortable truth the show forces you to face. Most of us are living some version of Sato's life. Maybe we leave our apartments, maybe we have jobs, maybe we maintain social media presences that make us look functional. But internally, how many of us feel like we're just pretending to be adults while everyone else seems to have figured it out? How many of us feel trapped by our own inaction but paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice? Welcome to the NHK predicted that having infinite options would create paralysis, not freedom. That constant access to information about what we could be doing would make it harder, not easier, to choose what we actually want to do. The beautiful thing about Welcome to the NHK is that it doesn't offer a fairy tale solution. Sato doesn't become rich or famous or find his dream career. He just starts participating in life again. He gets a job, maintains relationships, accepts that life is messy and uncertain. And that's the lesson our generation desperately needs to hear. You don't need to have it all figured out to start living. You don't need to find your passion to be valuable. You don't need to optimize everything to be happy. You just need to show up consistently, imperfectly, courageously. Welcome to the NHK predicted your life crisis because it understood something fundamental about human psychology that our culture refuses to acknowledge. The pressure to have everything figured out by a certain age is not only unrealistic, it's psychologically destructive. Your 20s and early 30s aren't supposed to be the time when you have it all together. They're supposed to be the time when you learn how to build a life through trial and error, connection and commitment. The crisis you're experiencing isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're human, living in a time when being human has become more complicated than ever before. But here's what Sato learns, and what you can learn too. The way out of the crisis isn't through perfect planning or finding your passion or waiting until you feel ready. The way out is through action, connection, and acceptance of imperfection. So stop waiting for the perfect moment to start your real life. Your real life is happening right now, crisis and all. And that's not a problem to be solved. It's a reality to be embraced. The question isn't whether you'll have it all figured out someday. The question is, will you choose to participate in your own life while you're figuring it out? Because 20 years from now, there will be another anime predicting the struggles of the next generation. But you have the power to write a different story for yourself right now. The beautiful irony of Welcome to the NHK is that it shows us the future we're living in, but it also shows us the way out. Not through grand gestures or perfect planning, but through small daily choices to engage with life despite the uncertainty. Your crisis isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature of growing up in an unprecedented time. And recognizing that is the first step toward moving through it, instead of being trapped by it.